Hello YouTube and happy Friday. Welcome back to another episode of AI News, Drama, and Updates. I'm really excited about today's video. A lot of new technologies and a lot of big updates happened this week, and we're going to cover as much as possible. I apologize in advance if today's video is a little bit lengthy, but there's a lot that happened this week. What we're seeing right now on the screen is an interview that took place in the new Metaverse. Now, you might remember what the Metaverse used to look like. It was quite laughable. And to be honest, I feel like even Zuckerberg himself is aware of how goofy that looked and how well received it really was. What you're seeing now is the new and updated version of that same technology, as Meta is using the VR headsets and things like that to create a digital clone of yourself. This is a Lex Fridman podcast. It's over an hour long. I'm going to include a link in the description for the video, and I definitely encourage you to kind of at least skip around so you can see what this looks like. There's not a lot of uncanny valley. It looks fairly realistic. It would seem like, regardless of your feelings towards what Facebook has maybe done in the past, or even decisions that Mark Zuckerberg has made in the past, the decisions that they've made recently, especially with open sourcing their AI models, have definitely moved them faster in this direction than any other company. Apple just recently tried to make a big splash by introducing the idea of their Apple Vision Pro. That's going to be coming soon, but that's going to be a bulky headset similar to what you just saw in this video. So you may or may not be aware that Google had a product ages ago, Google Glass, one of the many Google products that never really took off. And they were, I guess, the original smart glasses, or at least the ones that people have heard of. Now, I wasn't aware personally that Ray-Ban had also tried to create smart glasses, and I guess they didn't really do too well either. But with these recent announcements, it looks like Meta is working directly with Ray-Ban to try to create something that's going to allow you to see into the metaverse, or work directly with your technology. Now, as I look through some of this and the information that I had available, these don't really seem to be virtual reality glasses. They're not going to do the same thing as what you just saw, but they do seem to be a way of integrating the technology that's out there a little bit more close to home. You know, something like a smartwatch or a Fitbit, but these are on your face and they work directly with your phone and you can record video and interact with the metaverse, I guess, in a couple of different ways. The article does go through some specs here, so you got a 12 megapixel camera, 32 gigabytes of storage, 60 frames per second, 1080p recording. And it also goes into some examples of stuff that you might be able to do with this technology. Some of the examples that they included in the article are you could start a live stream, for example, with the glasses that are already on your face, or send some of your information to your contacts. For me, I think the most important takeaway here is that they don't look ridiculous, and this is something that I could see people actually using. You know, compared to Google Glass and how that looks, or even an Oculus Rift headset or the Apple Vision Pro, these look the most like something you would wear on the day-to-day. And I think that's really what Meta was trying to focus on here. But to finish up our section on Meta and all the big changes that they announced this week, one of the last things that I want to talk about is this consumer AI chatbots thing that they integrated into everything. WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, I mean, everything that Meta touches now has some kind of AI involved. Now, to me, this looks really similar to Character.ai or a couple of those other services where you're talking just to a chat bot. And most of these, what I've seen in the past is they take a large language model, something like their Llama 2, and they apply a LoRa to it. Essentially, they can focus it onto certain aspects that are trained into the model. So it looks like they're developing characters based on celebrities, and they're using celebrity input and celebrity involvement to probably not just get this thing off the ground, but to give familiar faces to converse with. The value of something like this is probably a little bit relative. You may not look at this and say, oh, I want to chat with Snoop Dogg. But I definitely don't want to judge too early, especially given now how far the metaverse has come versus how it looked just, 6 to 8 months ago. Like a lot of things we talk about on this channel, this is the worst that this technology is ever going to be. It really only goes up from here. So it's really hard to say where it's going to end up, but I think the thing that we can look most forward to is the competition that's going to heat up in the meantime. If we take a look at what OpenAI has responded with to make sure that they don't fall behind to companies like Meta or Anthropic or things like that, GPT4 has now brought back the ability to browse the internet, which is incredibly different from most other models. Yes, you could always do that through Bing, but you had to use Bing to do it. And of course, your context window was going to be smaller, there was going to be ads included. Now you're able to do this directly through GPT+. Now, this isn't a totally new feature. This is something that I feel like they brought back because competition is really starting to heat up, though. And with the GPT-4 system able to access the internet and get the most relevant, most up-to-date data for just about anything that you can ask it, it's a lot more powerful than it would be otherwise. Remember, the old data was only trained until September of 2021, so a lot of it was getting out of touch. The other thing I'm going to touch on here is the inclusion of the voice. So OpenAI had an app that they recently came out with. You can use GPT Plus using your phone. Not only can you use talk to text to basically just speak to it and it'll translate your voice using Whisper, communicate, and it'll type for you. OpenAI decided to give GPT a voice and it can speak back to you, but they also unlocked multimodality, which is huge news for everybody. While the advanced data analysis that was originally called Code Interpreter has allowed you to recently upload like PDFs and other files, things like that, so you can code and write with it, the multimodality being unlocked, now you can upload entire images. And GPT-4 isn't stupid. It can see your image and understand what it's looking at, break it down piece by piece. So there's been examples that we've seen where people are just taking shots of their whiteboard, for example, and saying, hey, write code for this. And GPT-4 is capable of doing something. Now, of course, this is, again, like we talked about before, very baseline technology, and we're starting to see this work. It's not going to be perfect, and I wouldn't go in with wild expectations that it can just write entire computer games for you. But based on the impressive stuff that we're seeing, the examples that we're using, it doesn't seem like we're too far off from a future like that. I love the example that we're looking at here because this is a real world use case type of scenario. This is the actual bike that I own, for example. Help me lower the seat. What are the instructions that I need to find here? And rather than a Google search that would kind of just search everything and give you generalized instructions that might apply to your bike, might not, you can get very relevant things here. And most importantly, as you see here, you can continue to add to the context of the conversation. For people who've been wary about this type of tech or have maybe tried it out with GPT-3 and weren't really impressed at the time, looking to see how far it's come is nothing but impressive. And so, not to be outdone, you're going to see companies like Amazon throwing around billions of dollars to make sure that they stay relevant. And they're betting, instead of on OpenAI, they're betting on Anthropic, which is the company behind Claude. As of just last week, I would have told you that Claude had a little bit of an edge on OpenAI because of the context window and because of other things. But with the announcements and the changes that just came out from OpenAI's side, that may not be the case anymore. And it feels like this back and forth, this competition, is a big win for us as consumers. To finish up talking about large language models for the day, I wanted to throw this out there. Now, this should come as no surprise for anybody, but even the CIA is developing their own AI chatbot. Now, personally, I don't believe that this headline does justice to what they're trying to create. I would imagine what they're trying to create is a large language model system, something on par with GPT-4. What I believe is really going to happen here is they're going to collect information, they're going to compile and train a large language model and use that data to find patterns, because that's what large language models are good at. That's how the autocomplete aspect of them works. Now, the interface for something like that would be a chat tool that I guess the CIA would use, so it wouldn't really be like public. The article says what they're creating here is a tool to look up information, ask follow-up questions, and summarize daunting masses of data. The CIA is obviously not going to tell us a lot about this thing. They're not going to tell us what the training material is. They're certainly not going to give the public access to something like that, and it's probably going to have higher security clearance than you or I do. But given the power and scope of large language models, the things we've already seen them accomplish, and what the future might have in store from them, not to mention the fact that every other country is probably doing this as well, this to me feels like a no-brainer, especially with China and India being so die-hard about their AI. But shifting gears a little bit, and one last thing about OpenAI, is they are reportedly in talks for some kind of hardware project. Could this be an OpenAI robot? Who knows? This article does speculate a little bit, and it even talks about the fact that OpenAI at one point had a robotics team, but I guess that got disbanded in 2021. But the rumor is starting to spread from the fact that OpenAI is talking with the ex-Apple Chief Design Officer. And given that Apple has a history with a lot of different types of products and a lot of different areas of technology, it's really hard to say exactly what this might be. But it's certainly something we're going to keep an eye on, and as soon as OpenAI comes out with some kind of hardware, you'll probably see it here very quickly. But speaking a little bit about hardware and a leak story about something that's going to be coming down the line here in the future, the Google Pixel 8. I have a Pixel 6 Pro myself. It uses what they called a tensor chip, and when you take a picture, it seems to do something with AI to kind of perfect the photo. It really does take great photos. In fact, here's a couple of examples on your screen from stuff that I've just taken with my phone. What it seems to be able to do is identify faces and allow you to kind of change things around within your photo. So what we're seeing here is more of a live editing using AI in your phone. Now, I imagine that something like this is going to create a lot of mixed emotions, mixed reactions, because what you're taking a picture of and what you end up with are actually very different things at this point. I think depending on how you relatively feel about AI, how you feel about photo editing, a lot of different factors are going to play into this, but this is certainly new and interesting. I'm curious what your thoughts are on it. Feel free to leave me a comment below. But in the meantime, let's switch over to updates, and I have a story here that I could have seen coming a million miles away. Getty Images, who you may remember has sued Stable Diffusion because of copyright infringement or what they thought was copyright infringement, well, they, just like Adobe Firefly, have now created their own AI model, using the same exact technique that Adobe did. Now, this is, of course, a big miss for artists who were on the side of Getty Images. They were hoping that, they could do some damage to Stable Foundation with the lawsuit. But it turns out, just like Adobe, Getty is not interested in protecting you as an artist. They are only interested in protecting themselves and their bottom line, just like Adobe. So through completely legal means and through the copyright that they've already been granted through the existing laws, they've created a copyright-free AI model. It looks like what they did to create this was make use of NVIDIA's cloud services. We talked a little bit about that before, where NVIDIA was putting together a service for companies just like this to do exactly this, to train their own custom models for their own uses. But we are smack dab within a world now where even the largest companies that do stock photography, Shutterstock, Getty Images, and things like that, are going to have false images to make use of. And in one of the biggest stories that I have for you this week, the writer's strike has officially come to an end. A deal was struck with anti-AI stuff actually built into there. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it looks like they spent 141 total days on strike, finally securing what they consider a victory. So there's some articles that have already come out that are going to show the do's and don'ts and what they can and can't do with these new rules. And a lot of the writers are considering this a big, big win because they took a very strong anti-AI approach. Originally, what they wanted was no AI involvement whatsoever, and I think we've kind of gotten to a point where that might not even be possible, What you're seeing on the screen here kind of shows how everything is laid out in plain text, but I think this is the most important section here, where a writer can choose to use AI when performing their writing services. I think the biggest concern here is that writers were going to be diminished. For example, AI wrote this entire script. We just need you to rewrite it, and we're going to give you less credit, less money, because AI has done all of the work, right? And that's exactly what a lot of the higher-ups would absolutely have done without protections being put in place. The strike was a great idea, and a great win for the writers. I also want to point out the last section here talks about reserving the right to assert the exploitation of writers' material. Now that is a protection that hopefully keeps them from having future stuff that they've written be trained into other models without any kind of permission. It basically allows them to say that that is exploitation. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know where it goes from there, but that's what that means to me. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on anything that I've said here, though. Now, with all that said, and the writers now finally feeling secure and hopefully getting back to their jobs, we've unfortunately got a looming video game strike happening, because voice actors have voted overwhelmingly to strike if their needs aren't met. And unfortunately, I saw an article come out just before I started the video here where their needs are not being met. So there was a meeting that went down, and unfortunately they weren't able to reach a deal. That doesn't mean that a strike has officially started, but it looks like there's rumblings of one that potentially could be. I do want to reiterate that SAG-AFTRA, it felt like originally joined this strike to support the writers. But it would certainly seem like at this point they've gone on to their own, they've got their own individual demands that have to be met. The people that are in the SAG-AFTRA union are the actors and the other entertainers within the industry, and pretty much everyone who's not a writer. And this is a massive union with a lot of power behind it. So while the writers portion of this is maybe ended or coming to a conclusion, it doesn't look like we're done with the strike just yet. So stay tuned and I'll try to keep an eye on that for you. I wanted to end today's video with some really fun stuff that I've been seeing come out. This is a technology that's called Animate Diff. Animate Diff seems to be the most modern form of AI-assisted animation that I've come across yet. It's really cool looking, as you've seen, and I haven't yet created anything of my own with it just yet, but that's likely coming very soon. I just wanted to show it off because I think it looks really cool and really smooth. And the last thing that I wanted to show off is this really impressive example of Gaussian splatting. Now, this wasn't done with a drone like you saw a few weeks ago. This was done with, I believe, just one or maybe just a few photos. But you can see the amount of realism, you zooming in and out and using AI assistance to create a world around the character that maybe didn't even exist in the original photo. This stuff is really impressive, and as it continues to grow, I am very excited to see where it goes. But that's what I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you have an awesome rest of your Friday. I hope you're able to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff that helps the channel. And as always, thank you for watching.